I'm joined now by Speaker Pelosi. Thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure, Brian. I was looking forward to being with you.
Well, thank you. So we just saw new January 6th footage from your daughter, from Alexandra, get released, showing how mad you were at Donald Trump and at the January 6th insurrectionists. And yet, right now, Donald Trump is out on the campaign trail. He's glorifying them. He is promising to pardon them. He's treating them as heroes. These people were there at the U.S. Capitol because they wanted to kill you. They were seeking to assassinate you. Can you explain how it feels to see him predicate his reelection on protecting those people and how personal this issue is for you?
I think it's a sign of his weakness. This is a very weak person. He was weak when he incited an insurrection of the Capitol because he lost. He lost. He was a loser, and he couldn't face that reality, so he said it was a theft. Sent these people to this. Now he's having a party honoring them or something. Yeah. But the thing is that somebody said to me yesterday, so many of the Republicans on Capitol Hill have reevaluated their what they saw that day. I said, they're not reevaluating it. They're telling a different story. They know what they saw that day, and they are now trying to cover it up because it is so awful that even they cannot accept how awful it was. So now they're lying about it, and that's what he's doing. But that's all the more reason why this man can never be anywhere near the White House again. That's why this election is so important, and that's why we have to make a decision to win. We made that decision. The president made that decision, President Biden. We thank him for his patriotism to save our country, and we thank him for his selflessness to step aside. He said, I love this job, but I love our country more.
Another instance where political violence was validated was with the violence against your husband, Paul Pelosi, which you spoke about in your book, The Art of Power, a New York Times #1 bestseller. Congratulations. So I want to get into that in just a moment. But first off, how is he doing, and how is your family doing?
Thank you. He's doing fine physically, getting there. He has a little ways to go. The trauma is something that will be long-lasting for our family, for my children and our grandchildren, of their father being assaulted and grandfather being assaulted in our home. And that's one thing. That's a horrible thing. But to have the former president of the United States and his family, Democrat, Republican governors, others making a joke of it.
Right.
That was really traumatic. That was so sad for our country, and that people would laugh at such a thing. That's very traumatizing.
Can you speak on that for a moment? Because Republicans will clutch their pearls at anything that Democrats do and claim that Democrats are seeking to perpetuate political violence. And yet, in an instance where there was actually political violence, and it occurred at the hands of Donald Trump because he incited these lunatics to go attack the U.S. Capitol, to go attack you and your husband, for them to then turn around and laugh at it. Can you speak on that?
Well, they take their example from him.
Right.
This is a grotesque figure, Donald Trump, and he projects everything. Like he'll call Hillary crooked Hillary. He's crooked. He calls me crazy Nancy. He's crazy. Everything he does is a projection. So he is projecting onto the Democrats. He's saying the Democrats motivated the person to shoot him. No, but that might be something he might do.
Right.
And so he projects, and he's trained by example, all these others who will project. It's a really tragic thing for our country. The only remedy is to win. And the remedy to win is to win big. So that when he goes on to say, I'll only accept the results if I win, that's a lunatic.
Right.
That's a lunatic. But yet, there are enough people who still decide they're going to vote for him, and we have to show them the difference in the vision for them for the future. That's what Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are prepared to do.
The title of your book is The Art of Power. It doesn't escape me that there is a link between the words The Art of Power and Donald Trump's book, which is The Art of the Deal. Was reclaiming that phrase something that you thought about in titling this book?
No, I didn't even know what his book was called. I didn't know he even wrote a book, much less read one. No, it had nothing to do with that. I was contemplating different titles, and I came up with that. And it had nothing to do with him. I don't even know he wrote a book.
You had mentioned President Biden's selflessness in deciding to step aside. Can you talk about your relationship with President Biden right now? I know you've spoken in other interviews about how you haven't yet had the chance to speak to him since his decision to step down. How is your relationship with him? Can you speak a little bit on that?
Well, I've had a relationship with him for decades, more than 40 years, long before I was in Congress, and again, seeing him emerge as a very young senator, not even old enough to be sworn in when he was elected, but old enough by the time swearing-in day came. I've admired him greatly. For 3 generations, our family has loved Joe Biden. My husband and I are his friends and Jill's friends. My children loved him as little children, and now they're all grown up. And my grandchildren love him. So it was out of deep love for him, deep love for his legacy, that it would be respected, and right now and historically, that I thought it was really important for him to have a better campaign to win the election. I haven't heard from him since. I think that the depth of our relationship and the length of time that we've been friends will hopefully bring us together sometime soon. But I ran for this election now to defeat Donald Trump and to elect Democrats to the Congress of the United States and across the board, state legislatures, governors, and all the rest. But making sure that Donald Trump never set foot in that White House again, and officially, personally, or in any other way.
CNN just interviewed Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, and there was weeks prior to this interview where all of the media, the mainstream media, was complaining that they hadn't had access yet to Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And yet, when they did, one of the questions included asking Kamala Harris for her response to an inane Donald Trump quote where he denied Kamala Harris's biraciality. And of course, Kamala Harris just brushed the question off, didn't give it any attention because it didn't deserve any attention. Can you talk about the way that the media has handled this campaign and basically amplified a lot of right-wing talking points in the instances where they do have access to Kamala Harris and Tim Walz?
Well, Donald Trump benefits from the media all the time because he says outrageous things and they think they have to cover it. If they just ignore some of his weaknesses, because that's what it is, it would be a better thing. The fact that they would repeat that inane statement of his is so ridiculous. Kamala Harris is proud of who she is. She went to Howard University, a historically black university and college. So, I mean, why would you repeat such a thing? Right. But there's somehow or other, you turn on the TV, they're always talking about Donald Trump. Is there money in it? I don't know. Is that what it is?
We are seeing an increasingly desperate Donald Trump, and he feels backed into a corner, and he does what he does when he does feel backed into a corner, which is to lash out and say outrageous things, because he saw what happened in the 2016 election, where all he had to do was say something crazy and he would get a ton of attention, and he's been conditioned in his own mind to think, all I got to do is get the attention back on me, get the eyeballs back on me, and poof, I'll win the election. Can you speak on whether you've seen this tactic before by Trump and what it actually signifies?
Well, you know, it's interesting to me because I hear Kamala say to great applause, I know people like him. I've prosecuted people like him. I know him. I know him. And this is somebody so unworthy of the adulation that he receives from certain elements in our population. And that's who they are. Who are they? Some of them are the people who we'll never get. You know, they don't like women, they don't like people of color, they don't like LGBTQ, they don't like immigrants, they don't like people who don't share their view on guns, God, and that's what they call the abortion issue, and gays and that. So we won't ever get them. And then there are the very rich, the wealthy, wealthy people who have been pouring money into foundations and all the rest to make sure that they don't have to pay taxes or have regulation of anything they do. Clean water, clean air for our children, you name it. They're not with that. All they want is money.
Right.
It's greed. It's massive greed on the part of this. Now, it isn't that many of those people electorally, but it's a lot of money that funds this operation. The other in between are people who genuinely have concerns about innovation. What does that mean to them and their family and their occupation and their livelihood? Globalization, what as they've seen the factory down the road closed down. And those are legitimate concerns, which Joe Biden and Kamala Harris addressed in our rescue package, in our infrastructure package, and a rescue package without one Republican vote.
Right.
Pensions for unions and all the rest of that.
The CHIPS package, for example, 800,000 manufacturing jobs.
Yeah, and the CHIPS package, the night before the vote, the Republicans said, we're not voting for the bill.
Yeah.
They made the chairman of the committee, not the chairman, but the top Republican on the committee, he made a beautiful case for the bill in the Rules Committee the night before. Then a couple hours later, they said, no votes for you.
Right.
And they said to me, well, we needed some of the Republican votes. I said, tell the Republicans to go, just forget it. We don't need them. We're going to do it without them. But we had to pull in some of our own votes to make sure we could do it. And when we got to 218, some of the Republicans joined us, but they weren't allowed to join us until we got to 218.
Right, because then they realized that they wouldn't be able to take any of the credit that would inevitably come from this without having voted for it.
Well, they sincerely believed in it, some of them.
Yeah.
Sincerely believed in it. 24 of them.
Right, but it was more important to toe the party line in the lead up to that than to actually
they would have let it go down. They would have let it go down.
Can you speak on...
And again, if I may, the infrastructure bill, 13 Republicans. They all go around as groundbreaking, ribbon cuttings as if they were there. They not only didn't vote for it, they criticized it. It was wrong, blah, blah, and now they're showing up. The other thing is the Inflation Reduction Act, reducing the cost of insulin down to $35 from $500-600 a week. The biggest investment in saving our planet, jobs, recognizing the role of the private sector in creating those jobs with tax credits and the rest. Not one Republican vote.
Can you speak on specifically on the idea of clean energy? Right now, we are watching this battle take place between the U.S. and China for control of clean energy manufacturing. This is going to be the future. No matter how much Republicans pretend that entrenching our reliance on fossil fuels is the future, that is a dying industry and the future is clean energy. So you have a Republican Party that is so focused on criticizing China, criticizing the CCP, and yet right now, by virtue of entrenching our reliance on fossil fuels, are they not just ceding all of that control, all of the future, to the very country that they complain about?
Yeah, but again, they're thinking in the near term. And in the near term, you have their leader, the thug that is the head of their cult, saying to the fossil fuel industry, give me $1 billion and I'll reverse all of this. Isn't that so sad?
Bought and paid
and
for
these
it.
guys are totally enabling that to happen. But it does have its own inevitability, and that's why this was a remarkable, under leadership of the president, he was remarkable. Without one Republican vote, the IRA bill, and I was very proud of it because we've been working on this for a long time, and the provisions in the bill were part of what Kathy Castor had in our select committee, working with business and labor, environmentalists and labor, religious community, every aspect, farmers, private sector, every element to put something together that would get the job done and create the most jobs. 16 million jobs created under the leadership of Joe Biden. The other guy, the worst job creation record since Herbert Hoover, since the Great Depression, if anybody knows what that is, historically knows what that is. But on top of that, that's about then. This is about the future. We're talking about how Kamala's going to take it into the future, take us to new heights, predicated on that, demonstrating that we can get the job done, but also listening, learning, taking it into the future where more people feel that they're part of the prosperity of our country.
Well, a big part of our ability to actually be able to enact our agenda is making sure that we have control of the House. So how does that look right now as we head toward November?
Well, I'm very proud of Hakeem Jeffries, and I'm absolutely certain he's going to be Speaker, nominated as Speaker in, 10 weeks or something like that, but that he will be the Speaker in January. And I just want everybody to understand, and this is self-serving, I'm going to praise myself. It was really essential that I be there as Speaker on January 6th. Not me, but a Democratic Speaker be there then. Hakeem being the Speaker on the ongoing is essential to our future, but it is essential to our democracy on January 6th. 2025, because we must win this election. How does it look? It looks great. We're only 4 votes short. We lost 5 votes in New York. We picked up 1 so far. We hopefully will pick up more there, but we are working all over the country because I want more than that. As I said, I ran for this re-election to be in position to help win the Congress, but absolutely to be sure that Donald Trump did not win.
What was the most important piece of advice that you handed off to Hakeem Jeffries?
Oh, well, with Hakeem, I gave him the same advice that I received and that I give everybody else. Be yourself. Just go be yourself. And I expect you to exceed anything that we did because of the platform that we have created for you and the base of support politically, financially, and all outside, but internally. And Hakeem has really the respect of our members in a beautiful, lovely way, and he's so eloquent. So my advice is just be yourself, because you know what you need to do as a legislator, as a leader, as a political leader, as well as a policy maker.
What kind of support are those Democrats in that are running in Biden-won districts where Republicans are currently serving? What kind of support are they getting, those candidates getting, ahead of the November election?
Oh, they're doing fine. In some of those races, the incumbent isn't running, and that makes it easier.
Right.
It just makes it easier because in some of those districts, the incumbent wasn't this, shall we say, the enablers that the other people in Congress are. There aren't double-digit number of Republicans in the Senate.
Right.
I mean, the House. I'm not speaking. I'm speaking just of the House. There aren't 10 people of any, shall we say, reliability to do the right thing. I'll give you an example. This is 15, 16 million jobs. Herbert Hoover. That's one comparison. This one is when we did Roe v. Wade to enshrine it into law. We didn't get one Republican vote, as you probably would expect. But then I wanted to bring to the floor Kathy Manning's bill, which was women have a right to contraception. Some members said to me, you're giving the Republicans a way out. They'll look normal or something. I said, don't you worry about that.
They're not gonna pick up on any effort
Women
to help them
have
look
a
normal.
right to contraception.
Yeah.
You would think that if you reject terminating an abortion, you would welcome contraception.
Right.
8 Republicans voted yes. 195 Republicans voting no. Women do not have a right to contraception.
On an issue, by the way, that has lost Republicans elections in Kansas, Kentucky, Ohio, Virginia, Alabama. So you would think that they would see that and help themselves, basically, because it doesn't help Democrats for them to do this. This would be to help themselves electorally.
I understand, and my colleague said they're going to help themselves on this, but
apparently not.
8. And of course, they're following their leader, who doesn't. I mean, he has been so. What's the word? He lies. What's a euphemism for lying? But nonetheless,
obtuse.
No, but I mean, he doesn't even know what he cares about. Now, this for me is something that I have 5. My husband and I have 5 children in 6 years and 7 days. We respect everybody else's faith, family planning, all the rest of it, to do what they need to do. And for him to be talking about taking pride in overturning Roe v. Wade by appointing those judges.
Right.
And then coming around and saying, well, I don't know about Florida and the issue on the ballot. Such a raging, inflamed hypocrite. But you know what? Let's not pay attention to him. He's a weak, soon to be, twice impeached, twice defeated former president of the United States. Let's talk about what good things there are to come under Kamala Harris and Tim Walz as we go forward.
Well, to that point, Republicans have been seeking to redefine Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in their desperation to find something to stick on them. Can you talk about what your elevator pitch to voters is in terms of how you would define Kamala Harris and Tim Walz heading into November?
I would say that it's about their vision. The difference between their vision and the Republican vision. I would take you to the kitchen table with them, in America's kitchen table, the most powerful table in America, not a corporate table, not a cabinet table, a kitchen table where families make their decisions. And the decisions that families have to make about the cost of health care, the cost of prescription drugs, the freedom which is an economic issue, the size, timing, or if you want to have a family, the security of their pensions, job creation, and the rest. I would take them to the kitchen table and say, at your America's kitchen table, Tim Walz and Kamala Harris have been there in their own lives, in their own experience, into the middle class. And that's why the answer to the first question in the interview was she will address middle income, an economy that works for middle income families. And that's really what's so important. Instead of a tax bill, the only thing the Republicans did when they had the majority and what's his name was in the White House was to pass a tax bill that gave 83% of the benefits to the top 1%, adding $2 trillion, I didn't say billion or million, trillion, trillion dollars to the national debt. Right. These fiscally responsible people adding $2 trillion in national debt for something that gave a benefit to the richest people in America, corporate and personal individuals. So getting back to what they have to put out there is they, Kamala and Tim, are there for America's working families, addressing their kitchen table issues, as opposed to Bozo, who's there for the weak Bozo, who's there for the wealthy. I
think that the most telling part of that is that Donald Trump is doing the same shtick that he did in 2016, where he presents himself as this populist hero, and when he was running in 2016, he claimed that he was going to have a health care plan that was more comprehensive and less expensive. He claimed that he was going to add jobs. He claimed that he was going to pass an infrastructure law to help Americans. Yeah. He claimed that he was going to pass a middle-class tax cut. At the end of the day, to your exact point, all he did with his political capital was a tax cut for millionaires and billionaires. That's it.
That's it.
When push came to shove and he actually had the opportunity to walk the walk, what he did was just help himself and his rich donors. You did bring up one point, and then we'll wrap up right after this. But you did bring up a point that I thought was important, and that is this idea of freedom. And we have seen Democrats reclaim a lot of the ideals that Republicans had been hiding behind as part of their branding. And one was that this idea that they are the party of freedom. And so in the last few weeks, we have heard Democrats at rallies chanting USA, USA, USA. We have heard Kamala Harris talk about the importance of NATO. We have heard Democrats writ large talk about the importance of protecting freedom. As someone who's focused on messaging for a long time, how does it feel to see this message, the reclaiming of this idea of patriotism, kind of break through for the left?
Well, it is. It's always been there for us. There's nothing new in our patriotism, nothing new in our honoring the vision of our founders of a country that is free and democratic and respectful of individuals, nothing free of our support for our men and women, nothing new about our support for our men and women in uniform and respecting them when they come home and meeting their needs. Nothing new about our commitment to NATO. It's just that maybe it hasn't been messaged adequately. You assume that people know But assume nothing. You know, assume makes an ass of you and me. That's how that word is spelled. So, but the fact is the other side has been totally hypocritical about it.
I think
totally
Donald
hypocritical.
Trump exposed the veneer of the reality, which is that they're not patriotic, that these people don't care about America, that they don't care about the military or family values or states' rights or fiscal responsibility or law enforcement or the Constitution.
Or the peaceful transfer of power. Our democracy depends on respect for free and fair elections. And they have demonstrated very clearly they're not there for that. It's about money, it's about greed, and that's just the way it is. Now, again, Democrats have always been patriotic, so it's not new, but maybe it needs to be. President Lincoln, let the record show that I am quoting a Republican president, President Lincoln said, public sentiment is everything. With it, you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, practically nothing. But for public sentiment to prevail, people have to know. And just not enough people knew what the difference was between the two visions. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz will make that clear. They'll make it clear from their personal lives. I know them both very well. They're people of deep faith, and that is reflected in their public service and their respect for people. They're people of, that's personally, officially, they are strong in their knowledge of the policy and the difference it makes in people's lives and their strategy to get things done, as well as their eloquence in conveying the message. And then politically, they're very astute. Tim Walz won in a district that was very, very red in 2006. Yeah. Many of us believed in him. Christine had him in her boot camps, and he turned a very red district by bringing together Democrats, Republicans, Independents to win, to come to the Congress, vote for the Affordable Care Act. That took courage from that district. Yeah. Go back and win again, to come back to be a champion for veterans and the ag community in the Congress.
If Democrats win the White House, win the Senate, win the House, will you stay in Congress?
Well, but let's take it one step at a time. Let's just win this election.
Okay.
It's just win this election. But when we do, one of the first things we have to do is get rid of the filibuster rule so that 51 votes can pass Roe v. Wade, Equality Act for LGBTQ community rights,
Freedom to Vote Act.
the freedom to, and I'll come to that because that's the most important one. All of these things, whether it's gun violence, freedom from gun violence, the list goes on. But the Freedom to Vote Act has an impact on everything else. And that we have what I think is a clear vision from the Senate that they would do that as soon as we win this election. And finally, a trifecta, House, Senate, White House, but also governorships and across the board.
Finally, let's end off with this. What do you hope that your legacy will be at the end of your storied House career?
Well, first of all, I mean, the Affordable Care Act, it's not just my legacy, it's the legacy of the unity of our Democrats. I said to them over and over, our diversity is our strength. Our unity is our power. And that unity make a difference at the kitchen table of millions, tens of millions of American people. So I keep coming back to that because it's a legacy of policy, but it's also a legacy of unifying my members and listening to how they would like to proceed, building consensus, respecting diversity, unifying the party to pass a bill without one Republican vote.
Seems like a good place to leave off. Speaker Pelosi, congratulations on The Art of Power, on your book, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today and for all of the work that you've done.
Thank you. Thank you. I look forward to reading your book, Shameless.